Guys, what's happening right now in Gaza isn't a peace deal. It's a pause in destruction. Israel says it's withdrawing. The media says it's a ceasefire. But on the ground, 58% of Gaza is still under Israeli control. That's not peace, that's occupation, with better PR. Today we're diving deep, not into the headlines, but into the fine print. Because the world just saw tanks leaving Gaza and thought the war was over. But the truth is, the war just changed shape. So here's the story. After months of bombing, destruction, and displacement, Israel finally announced a ceasefire. Cue the world headlines. Israel withdraws troops, peace returns to Gaza, and normalcy restored. But let's actually define normalcy. Because when hundreds of thousands of Palestinians return to their homes and find nothing but rubble, that's not peace, that's grief management. And yes, videos surface showing people celebrating, waving flags, distributing sweets, dancing in the streets. But let's be real, those weren't celebrations of victory. They were moments of survival, moments of we are still here. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calls it a strategic pause. Translation, we are not done yet. Let's talk about the 58% clause. That's the part most news channels don't tell you. Even after withdrawing, Israel still controls 58% of the Gaza Strip. 58%. Think about that. Imagine someone storms into your home, burns half of it down, then says, hey, I'll leave, but I'm keeping your kitchen, your living room, and your Wi-Fi password. And that's how this withdrawal looks like to me. According to the reports coming, Israeli forces remain stationed around Gaza City, key intersections, and eastern Khan Yunis. They have just rebranded the presence as security operations. You know how companies rebrand after a scandal or receive the image? Facebook became Meta. Twitter became X. Israel just renamed occupation as security. And the world clapped. Let's talk about Gaza's celebration and Israel's confusion. There's a big talk going about those viral clips from Gaza. Women smiling, children cheering, men handing out sweets. Israeli propagandists has been sharing those clips to show the world there's no genocide. The Palestinians were playing victims. Now for the outsiders, it's easy to look and say, oh look, Gaza is celebrating peace. But for Palestinians, those were funeral smiles. Because every celebration was happening on the ashes of what used to be home. You see a crowd of people dancing. They see the crater where the house used to stand. And while Gaza danced, Israel panicked. Why? Because this wasn't the ending Tel Aviv wanted. In military terms, Israel didn't achieve victory. In political terms, it lost the global narrative. And in human terms, it created a new generation that will never forget. As one of the analysts put it, Israel won the battle but lost its image. Let's talk about the return of the displaced. There are some pictures that didn't make prime time. Lines of displaced Palestinians, thousands, walking back to Gaza City after months of being forced out. That's on a parade. That's a pilgrimage through trauma. These are the same people who were bombed, starved, and silenced. Now walking through ruins, carrying their children, their bags, and whatever is left of their lives. And yet, there's something unbreakable about it, because despite everything, they are returning. That's the part that terrifies Israel. Not rockets, not Hamas, but resilience. Because how do you defeat people who have nothing left to lose, but still choose to rebuild? Here are some peacekeepers. Enter Turkey. President Erdogan announced that Turkey will monitor the ceasefire. Basically, he's saying, we'll make sure Israel doesn't cheat again. I think that's bold, and someone has to do it. Because Israel's entire ceasefire history reads like a bad dating record. Promises made, promises broken, block numbers, repeat. Erdogan's move means Turkey is stepping into a role the West has completely abandoned. And that is of a moral referee. And here's a shocker. The UK just made a chilling announcement. British citizens who serve in the Israeli Defense Forces can now be tried for war crimes back home. And that's huge. For the first time, Western nations are admitting maybe this wasn't a clean war after all. Now let's talk optics. Israel spent decades selling itself as the only democracy in the Middle East. But now the footage coming out of Gaza, the crumbled buildings, the mass graves, the dead children, has flipped that image upside down. And you can't airbrush war crimes. You can't just bomb an entire population and post on Instagram with hashtags pray for peace, ceasefire mood. Even in countries that traditionally back Israel, like Jordan, people are celebrating Palestine's survival. Because this moment, as fragile as it is, feels like a moral turning point. It's not about who won the war, it's about who still has humanity left. So, what happens now? Gaza rebuilds again. Palestinians return again. And the world watches again. But something is different this time. This time, the world saw everything. Every bomb, every hospital hit, every child pulled from the rubble, live-streamed, documented, archived. This was the 1948. This was the 1967. This was 2025. and the entire planet had a front row seat. So even if Israel still controls half of Gaza, it's lost control of the narrative. And in modern warfare, that's a real battleground. Because once the story changes, policy follows. And once policy changes, power shifts. That's why this withdrawal isn't a peace deal. It's a pause before the next headline, the next strike, the next speech about self-defense. Look, I get it. This is complicated. The conflict's decades old. The politics are messy, and every side has blood on its hands. But at some point, we have to call it what it is. This isn't about religion. It's not about defense. It's about domination. And domination always collapses, not because of bombs, but because of conscience. History doesn't remember who dropped the most missiles. It remembers who stood on the right side of morality. And if you're watching those videos from Gaza, the flags, the sweets, the songs, and still think this is over, then you have misunderstood what survival means. Because Palestinians don't celebrate peace, they celebrate persistence. So yeah, Israel withdrew, but only from the map, not from the mindset. And Gaza, it's still standing, barely but proudly. Because when you reduce a city to dust and its people still smile, that's not weakness, that's defiance. This wasn't Israel's victory. This was Gaza's reminder that you can occupy land, but you can't occupy hope. If you learned something today, hit like, but more importantly, hit think. Because silence in moments like these is just another form of participation. I'm Mazhar, and this was The Breakdown.